G'day and welcome to the Investor Motivation Podcast. My name's Robert Gowdy and this is...
Amy Lehman.
G'day Amy, how are you?
Great, Robert. How are you?
Good, I'm sensing Friday afternoon vibes here.
Yeah, it is Friday afternoon. It's almost 4 o'clock, so we've got over an hour left of work, but you know, it's one of those Fridays you're just a bit keen to go enjoy the sunshine outside.
Sure. You didn't have your 3 o'clock coffee like I did.
No, you didn't.
So I'll run all the energy. Very good. So today, what are we chatting about?
Today we are going to cover off on how unaffordable the housing market is at the moment, and especially for the younger generation that are looking to buy their first home. We know that, the older generation purchased their homes for, a couple $100,000, and now they're worth, millions in some places. So they've really, really benefited from the run up in the housing market we've seen. But if you're new and young and trying to get in now, how do you do it?
How on earth? And this is something I've been thinking a lot about, and thinking about, obviously we're dealing with 3 generations. How can we make this happen? How can young people do it without any sort of assistance? I'm sort of nearly at the viewpoint, unless you're up in a rural country town like we are, then the chances of doing that are really low. Where you still can buy something that might be worth $250,000, although it may not be flash in our small town, but you can still make a start.
Yeah.
Go down into the cities and the bigger centres. Fat chance, Rob.
No, especially, with the increase in rentals that we saw, rental prices during COVID especially, there's less free cash flow to go towards savings for a home deposit. So
so it's not just about the values of the asset itself, it's also the cost of living. Everything's biting hard, and then we see even renting's become a nightmare in Melbourne, where you have like an open house for rentals, like a disco. There's people everywhere and there's a line out the front. It's nuts.
And even renters are coming in their best, their Sunday best, and trying to appear as wealthy as possible and put down larger rental options of payments and longer bonds and everything that they can do to just get their foot in the door for an expensive rental.
Yeah. So now that's something I've been thinking about, and I've got some strategies, and these strategies are not going to be for everyone. As I said, I don't see how, my children's age group, that's between 25 and 19, that are starting off, how on earth are they going to buy their first home and make that start, even if it is, if it's the medium home in Sydney or Melbourne, one of the capital cities, it's still 700 plus. That it's just huge. And there's no point looking back to saying, well, when I was young it was this, when I was starting out it was this, because that's just not reality. That's just decades ago, and it doesn't count.
Yeah.
But before we kick off, you'll do the acknowledgement of land.
Sure. On behalf of the Investor Motivation Podcast, we would like to pay our respects to the traditional owners of the land on which we do record this podcast, and pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging.
Great. Thanks, Amy. I'm trying to work out why I was actually thinking and strategizing about this, and I think Amy and I went to a conference early in the year, and during some of the sessions there was one that was really talking about intergenerational wealth, and then the next one after that might have been really boring, and then I go into creativity mode and I start writing down a lot of things, and we brought no notes with us today, so really just running on the caffeine and running on the problem at hand, and
the Friday feels,
and definitely the fact that my children, which is Amy's age, are at some stage going to want to own their own home. But how do they do that with the issues that they're facing, where obviously the house prices of property have gone up so much, and in times when COVID hit and people lost their jobs, which should have been the right time for there to be some type of correction within the property market, the reverse happened. The government comes out and throws more money at property. If you want to renovate or do something, here is free money. And also we're very lucky we live in a country where we have such wealth and the government can do that.
But those actions are inflationary, and that's exactly what happened. That free money given out just bumps up the prices of the housing market.
Correct. And we can go all the way back to 2000. So it was in 2000 is when the 10% GST was added on to everything.
Yeah.
So of course there was this monster rush prior to that for everyone to build the houses, to do, renovations, to get all this stuff done before they had to do, pay an extra 10%.
Yeah.
The government then said, okay, well, here's a first home buyer's grant.
Yeah.
$7,000 it might have been at the time, which was a lot of money back then. And then the GFC hit, and then there was more concessions. And I remember, a family member at the time built their first home. So there was a first home builder's grant.
Yeah.
And I think with all the concessions, that got to around $42,000. So it was a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
Within a year of those stats coming out, where people could get up to, say, mid-40s, what had actually happened was the amount that people, first home buyers or builders, they were borrowing $55,000 more than what they were just a year prior.
Yeah.
So again, that's that inflationary thing that you give people more money, bang, the prices go up.
Yeah,
and
they don't take that into account and take that money off what they were thinking. They just go, oh, cool, free money. I'll still spend that same amount I was going to prior to that free money, and that bumps up the prices. And
correct. And then obviously, the whole, the system, all these benefits, these inflationary things, like free stamp duty or no stamp duty, and all these grants was about keeping people employed during, the GFC, during COVID, and when GST was implemented in 2000, it was about to fill the void when things slowed down.
Yeah.
So it's about keeping the country going. So there's merit in it, but every time it happens, it's inflationary. And then after the GFC, around 09, 08, 09 and 2010, we had extremely low interest rates, and they persisted for a long time. So the theory that I've come up with, that it's the, my generation, it's my parents' generation that have benefited substantially from the increase in value. And I believe that it's, in a way, that it's brought forward 10 or 20 years worth of growth and returns of the property market that would have been accumulated between now and 20 years ahead of us, that has been taken off our children, or my children. That it is just the growth, and people might say, oh, Rob, property will just double every 10 years and have, it's done this for the last 30, it'll just keep doing it. Of course, there is government policy, there is immigration, there's lots of things that are pushing up, house prices. It is such a conflicted area. I think of all the interested parties, from governments to governments like, transactions.
Stamp duty
they love stamp duty. Do accountants think that, house investment properties are good? They love them because they've got the blinkers on.
Tax deductions.
That's negative gearing. That's good, isn't it? And there's depreciation. I find it bizarre how negative gearing has been made out to be a good thing, a positive thing. You are actually losing money on this. So it's just, this is just my thought process that, there's 10 or 20 years of future growth that has already happened, but it's, benefited some generations, and it's hurting the first home buyers who just can't get in.
Definitely.
So if all that wealth has been built up in the, in their parents and their grandparents, in their equity of their homes, and they've benefited greatly from that, how do we, how do these kids, these young adults, make their first step, Amy, and without any help? And with the cost of living, I don't blame people saying, well, I'm going on holiday, I'm not even going to try.
Or I'm just going to rent for the rest of my life, or people have definitely started to think down that path a little bit more. And I guess it's not easy in Australia because we don't have, rental stability where you can lock in really long-term lease contracts. But other countries have that option and it's working for them. So people are definitely thinking about that more.
I've had some clients recently that sold a house in Europe that they had for decades, and they lost money on it after decades. We know what's happening in Japan. There's so many houses there that and I think it's not just Japan, it's Italy as well, that you can buy places for €1 as long as you go and do it up in Italy. And I'm not sure what you've read around Japan. Amy, have you seen much over there?
Yeah, their definitely view on property is if you're not building a house to live in it, and you essentially don't, it's frowned upon to buy a house secondhand.
Okay.
They view it much more that building the house and living in a brand new house is, status, and that's the way things should be.
Right. Yeah. So all these
Lots of
other
empty.
houses are empty, and
Yeah.
So no doubt that Australia's a bit unique, but so is New Zealand, and so is Canada. Canada's a similar type of economy to ours.
Yeah.
There's a lot of resources. There's a lot of wealth there. How do we get the? I think there's a common goal that a lot of the generations, the three generations that I think about have.
Yeah.
So the grandparents want to see their grandkids do well.
Yeah, succeed. And
As parents, I want to see my children do well.
yeah.
And I want them to save. But how do we help them save without saying, here is $100,000? If people are lucky enough to have that spare money to give,
Yeah.
without just giving them those big lump sums that then they go and buy something they can't or shouldn't afford,
Yeah.
and they don't get a savings habit. And
Yeah.
this is where my strategy thinking is coming into play, where, hey, why don't we have a look at the First Home Super Savers scheme?
Yeah.
And if the kids, and I'll get you, Amy, to explain broadly how that works, because you know it probably a bit better than me, as in the detail of it, that the kids salary sacrifice, young adults, salary sacrifice into their super, tax effectively, paying 15% instead of their marginal tax rate.
Yeah.
And then the grandparents / parents subsidise the after-tax income, the cash flow that they would have got, that they've sacrificed.
Yeah. We probably should have run some numbers before diving into this podcast to give a real life example, but essentially, if the kids are salary sacrificing into super, they're paying that 15% tax on into super, whereas if they received that money as income, as they regularly would, it'd be taxed at their marginal tax rate, which is up to 47%. So it's massive tax savings. So if you're obviously proposing that the children do the salary sacrifice into super.
Correct.
And then the grandparents or parents then just supplement that after-tax income they would have received if
Correct.
they didn't do that.
Yeah.
So that would leave them that tax saving inside super ready to purchase their first home.
That's right, which they can get out, and I'll obviously, Amy, go for it in terms of the explanation of the scheme.
Yep. So every individual, so if they're part of a couple, it can be double this amount, but every individual can withdraw up to $50,000 from super from personal contributions in. So it can be, and we're proposing that it's the tax concessional contributions, but you can do personal contributions as well. It just doesn't have that tax saving. So $50,000 total each outside of super, but that's a maximum of $15,000 from any given financial year. So for the purposes of First Home Super Saver, there isn't a benefit of going over that $15,000 in a financial year into super.
Yep, fantastic. So just to give the numbers, I suppose an example that if, say, a person salary sacrificed $10,000 into superannuation, that 10 grand goes into super, 15% goes out, and they've got invested $8.5 grand. And that doesn't need to be exposed to the markets. That money could go and sit in just cash, because you may want to use it in 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
As opposed to, let's try to save that deposit in their individual names, and they're earning between 45 grand and 120 grand. You're going to be taxed at just a smidge under 35%. So instead of 8.5 grand saving, it's going to be 6.5. You're going to save 20%.
Yeah.
So that's the kicker. So it's saving. So the young adults are learning the savings habit rather than just giving, here is a big lump sum.
Yeah.
Which can happen afterwards as well. But I think there needs to be some responsibility and some habits.
And I think respect, we've talked about it before. You don't want to steal your kids' dream of saving for that first home on their own. You are just assisting and making it more
achievable in an environment where how on earth do they do this?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So 8.5 goes into superannuation.
Yep.
And the parents or grandparents supplement some of the lost $6,500.
Yeah.
Possibly not all of it, because people can still save.
Yeah.
You can still spend less than you earn, so that's important.
Yeah.
So this is a tax-effective way of doing it. Now, people are sitting there saying, "Oh, that's great, Rob, but how on earth do the parents or grandparents actually have the cash flow to do that?" And I think this is where it gets complicated, because we can't snooker the parents or grandparents' own retirement.
No.
So we can't snooker the grandparents' ability to go and do aged care if they need the care, because they've given all the money away. And this is where that I'm working on the spreadsheet that assesses the wealth and the equity at each level, the two older generations, and assess how many grandchildren are there, to make sure things are fair.
Yeah,
and
equalise that.
That's right. So this is where there may be, if someone's in Melbourne or Sydney and sitting in, a lovely suburban home, but it's worth $3 million. Now that $3 million doesn't help with any of these problems, but drawing some of that out progressively over time to assist the kids.
Especially in the instance where it is they've owned that house for, it could even be generations, but even if it's just decades, there's a lot of equity sitting in that house because they purchased it, for a much smaller amount, and it's just massively inflated since then.
And one of the goals that I'm seeing with the older two generations, the parents and the grandparents, they actually want to see their if we can't help our kids, who can we help? So that's where there's a common goal that grandparents and parents actually want to see their kids do well. So there's a common goal across the three generations. But how do you do it without snookering those older generations? If they don't have the money to help, if there's grandparents out there, they've got 30 grandkids, well, it's not, unless there's multi-millions of dollars across, that couple's assets, then it's more than likely not going to happen. So these strategies won't work for everyone, but, I understand why people say too hard, can't save, too expensive to live, too expensive to buy. I'm just going on holidays, I'm going to have fun. That's fine, but also that stubbornness in me says, well, you've got to try as well. And here's one where you can try, but you may need to get some help. And how can the older generations actually help? And I think there is a tax-effective way, and it's a way that the kids are still learning. But we've got to make sure that we're not snookering retirement plans for the older generations. Plans that where somebody need to go into aged care. So that there's those things that I'm thinking pretty deeply about, and how that we provide advice around that.
And that's make sure you do go see a financial advisor about this, because you do want to make sure that obviously the calculations for the benefit now for the kids are done and it makes sense, but also the projections for yourselves as grandparents and parents are done well into future, well into life expectancy, to make sure there is enough at 85 should you need to go into aged care full time.
And it's a topic and a strategy that I'm surprised that hasn't been brought up before. I wrote a blog on it probably 3 or 4 years ago when I was on holiday. I thought, hey, here's a great strategy. But no one's talking about it.
And it's so true. I'm always talking about first home super saver just for young people to do. But the question is always, well, how am I supposed to afford to live after that salary sacrifice? And it's potentially even for the younger generation to say, hey, instead of birthday presents, Christmas presents this year, just I need some cash because I'm doing this salary sacrifice to do this smart, tax-effective strategy to save for my first home. And, hopefully the parents are more than happy to just a couple $100 for Christmas, birthday instead of presents, if that's your true goal and you make that known to the older generation.
I think that would, that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So anyhow, it's a strategy that I think is, for some families, it's not going to work. For some families, it'll be a doddle. Do it easily. But it's about making sure that the assessments are done, get advice on this. As I said, we're working out the spreadsheets to assess the equity and the wealth within the generations, and to make sure it's achievable both now and also doesn't have adverse effects down the track. When should this be looked at? I would say as soon as kids, as young adults,
we're old now.
Young adults, as soon as they start earning and earning a reasonable wage, this should kick off straight away.
Yeah, because obviously the more income the young adult earns, the better that tax saving is by doing that salary sacrifice.
Yeah. And so, and I just know the reason why the First Home Super Saver Scheme is probably not that popular, and I can't think of any young person I've spoken to that really has implemented a strategy around that. Not one, because when people want to buy something, they just want to go looking for a house.
Yeah.
They just want to start the process.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult to say, I really want to buy a house and I'm going to save for the next 4 years to make it happen.
Yeah, you've got to definitely be a certain very, very disciplined type of person to be able to do that.
So, and that's where if you start it at 18 or once you finish your degree, before you're actually, wanting to buy, that you've got years worth of savings. So, perhaps if you're lucky enough with the right help, or just you save enough in your own right to do it, where you don't need anyone's help, and you put 15 grand away for 3 and 4 years, and you've got, between you and your partner, 50 grand deposit. Awesome.
It's massive.
Yeah. So anyhow, that's what I've been thinking about. It's one strategy that I will put together the presentation. All the know-how and everything within an Excel to make sure that we can provide advice around this, because for me it's a real issue at the moment.
Yeah.
People want help in this area, and young people just feel a bit snookered, and I feel as though that the younger generation's been robbed because of all the values have gone up, all the reasons why people just keep buying investment properties. Doesn't matter if you make money or not, just keep buying them and it'll just keep going up, and it seems to be all at the expense of this first home buyer generation.
It definitely, and there's a property guy on, I don't know, TikTok or Instagram or something, and not a spruiker, but somebody who's preaching the same lesson, really, that the older generation have benefited so much in the past. Now the young people can't. So he's actually calling out for, there's heaps of investment property owners out there that have empty properties. So then there's this all about, squatting in homes, and if of a home that's empty, put it out there so people can go squat in it to save money and actually purchase their own home one day. It's a serious problem.
No, that's right. I've seen the same chap where it's ludicrous where people can't get a house or can't get a rental, that there's empty places out there not utilised. And that's that. Is housing purely for wealth creation, or is it for shelter for Australians?
Exactly right. There's got to be a happy balance.
That's right. Can it be both? Anyhow, so it's something we've been thinking a lot about, and we will be implementing some pretty cool strategies there for clients. But broadly, that's it. And I'm surprised not more people are talking about this one as a solution.
You heard it here first, maybe.
Excellent.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. As always, if you have any other topics you'd like us to cover, drop a comment, send an email. We're on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Investor Motivation on YouTube, and then Instagram and TikTok. There's the Wealth Diaries, which is mine, and then Robert Gowdy Financial Advice for Rob.
Rob Gowdy should be able to find me.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you for listening. See you next time.
Bye.